Welcome to It's No Accident, a podcast about the challenges of personal injury and wrongful death law in Florida, one of the nation's most complex legal environments.
You'll hear compelling stories about real cases from our law firm in Tallahassee that will help you better understand your rights and protect yourself from the negligence of others.
I'm Mark Nonni.
And I'm Jaeson Homola.
And this is
It's No Accident.
Well, how many times after Hurricane Michael did a client hire you or hire us who had either got completely denied or had a super low ball offer, and then you got involved and got the right documentation together and sent it over, and pretty quickly the insurance company's tune changed, and all of a sudden now there's fair money on the table, right? And it happened pretty frequently, I think, right?
The vast majority. I mean, hundreds of times.
So it was hiring the attorney and you being the attorney, getting the right documentation together and getting it over to the insurance company that got the person a fair amount of money that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise, right?
Well, and I, part of that is how the legislation used to work, and because they didn't want to, they didn't want the attorney to incur a bunch of fees. They would just essentially rather pay what they essentially should have paid from day one and get the claim over with. But the people generally had to have a threat, and it's unfortunate. But what I can say, what I'd rather get into is not dwell on the legislation. What I'd rather do is tell people how they can actually, help themselves. And a lot of that is documentation before a storm happens. I don't know if most people probably haven't started thinking about this, but hurricane season's going to come be pretty quick. It's coming, and water temperatures are higher than they've ever been, and the projection is 5 to 8 major storms, right? And so, it's hopefully, we don't get any, but everybody should be prepared. And one way to be prepared for, not just hurricane season, having water and gas and the ability, if it's going to be bad, leave. It's just, a lot of those things. It's going around your home so that when they come out, they can't say, well, this has been pre-existing, or this is settlement, or this is a construction defect. So most people have a very high-tech device in their pocket right now. And it's very worthwhile to walk around your house, and it's going to feel strange taking a picture of a wall in your house, or the outside, or the roof, or your appliances, or your furnishing. All those things are important because they're part of a claim. If you have, if a hurricane, happens to hit your area and you get damage, if they come out and look at everything and they say, well, this massive crack on the side of your house is not from the storm, it's from, settlement. If you have a photo with metadata that shows you took it earlier this year, it's easier for you to rebut that. Right. Unfortunately, most people, they're not thinking, how am I going to prove that my house was in good shape? It's just not on their mind.
That's the last thing people are thinking about, yeah.
But it's worth the 30 minutes it would take you to walk around your house, take photos of all your major appliances, take a picture of a VIN number, take a picture of walls and windows that show that they're not fogged and they're not broken, and it's because oftentimes those are major expenses,
right.
And generally the things that get denied first are if your house shifts. Very rarely do they recognize that.
Right.
Wind and water are pretty common, pretty generally going to be covered for the most part. And by wind and water, I mean damage to a roof. A tree falls on your house. Those things are pretty easy to spot, pretty easy to identify. What happens a lot is because of pressure and wind during a hurricane, it damages windows. And so after the hurricane, they'll leak, they'll fog, and it's a very expensive thing to replace.
Right.
And it's almost never recognized as damage by a storm unless a tree goes through your window, right? And so the other thing is a lot of people don't realize that, when you have winds like that, it'll lift all your shingles and damage them. And even though they, you know, the way they work is they're stacked on top of each other. And when you have massive winds, they lift, water gets in, water penetrates, gets in areas, but when the wind stops, they fall back down.
So then you've got this water underneath your shingle that's just baking in the sun on top of the roof.
It's part of it. Generally, there's a membrane there, but the issue is more about it if it enters your attic, or if it enters crawl space, or if it enters areas, right? And it also, it's not just that, but it damages those shingles. It reduces the life of those shingles. You know, the more that they flex up and down, the more likely they are to crack, rip, break. And what you'll see is oftentimes there'll be a section of your roof that looks okay, and then there'll be a section where all the shingles are ripped off or gone, right? Well, it's likely that the wind didn't just hit that one section, right? And so there's generally more damage than is ever recognized. But you know, it's what I would encourage everybody to do is because the legislation has changed, and I would have encouraged everybody to do this before, but even more so now, because the fights are going to be harder.
Right.
And if you have direct evidence, you know, a photo of your house within a year, or a photo of an appliance within a year, or right, and that gets damaged during a storm, makes it very hard for them to deny that.
And it'll make the claim go a lot quicker, and it'll
Correct.
put you in a situation where most likely you don't have to contact an attorney or hire an attorney.
Correct.
Because you've got all the evidence that you need. You don't have to have these experts come out and try to figure out or
Recreate.
and recreate what happened.
Yeah, and
Or even if you do, all that stuff's going to be important evidence the experts are going to use.
Right.
If they do need them to come out.
correct. And oftentimes, unfortunately, it turns into a he said, she said, where you have a homeowner saying all this stuff was fine before the storm, and an expert from an insurance company saying, well, this crack here had to be from settlement from X, Y, and Z, or this, you know, these windows are 12 years old. It was already like this, right? Those are hard battles to fight. But if you have photos that show otherwise, it makes it very easy.
I literally had, you remember this, I literally had this happen when I owned that condo over on Duval, not far from here, with the pipe burst and the settlement on the corner of that condo. I had a pipe burst, and I wasn't living there at the time. I actually had a buddy living there, and you know, 3 days after the pipe burst, he called me and said, "There's a lot of water in the front yard. I don't know what's going on here." And it was kind of right in the area of the corner of the house, and you know, I had the plumbers come out and they fixed it. But after they fixed it, I could kind of tell like there was the upstairs door wouldn't close correctly. I couldn't get the window open right next to the area where the pipe had burst. And come to find out, I mean, there was like, it washed out a bunch of dirt underneath the corner of where the slab was at. And it had cracked the foundation pretty badly, or the slab pretty badly in that spot, and the condo had started sagging. I had the folks come out from one of the foundation companies came out, and they took a look at it, and they were like, you got a serious problem here, and the only way to fix it is for us to come in and put these pylons in and jack it back up and backfill the area. And it was a pretty significant cost. So I started looking at my insurance policy, and it looked like I had a claim there. Got in touch with the insurance company. They sent out their adjuster, and he said, well, this is just from settlement. You know, we know you had a pipe burst here, but I mean, it looks like there was settlement before the fact. Well, luckily, I had just had the floors replaced. I had the floors pulled up, and I didn't take any pictures. I called the flooring company, and I was like, did you guys take any pictures? You know, please tell me you took some pictures after you tore the floor up. And they were like, let us check. They get back to me a day later. They're like, we actually do have some pictures. I'm like, what does the concrete look like underneath where you pulled the floors up? And he was like, there's no problem with it. Well, we pulled up some of the flooring after the fact, and I mean, the size of the crack in the concrete, it was almost like the slab had just almost broken off and fallen down. And so they had pretty much denied the claim. And then after I sent them those photos, they said, all right, well, 2 days later, we'll pay it.
The photos make it, you know, it's the way claims work, unfortunately, is if there's doubt, they're going to pay less.
Right.
you know, and a lot of what a lot of what happens is, you know, you go into it thinking, boy, all this stuff is damaged, and they go into it thinking, you know, this couldn't be from the storm, or this isn't from the storm, and, you know, or whatever the cause was, a pipe or whatever, you know. But you know, it's the photos, you know, and especially if they're dated, you know, it's easy to show.
It's really hard for them to deny if you've got photos from a year before and there's no problem, and then after this major catastrophic event, there are problems. And what they're thinking about is, how are we going to explain this to a jury if we ever end up in a jury trial? And it's really difficult to do that.
Correct. Yeah, that's 100% correct.
Well, and you're talking about, you know, documenting the condition of your house and walls and appliances, you know, documenting what it was like before the storm, so you can use that as proof afterwards.
And that's his point, your floors. Because what often happens is when a house shifts or moves, you know, tiles will crack, laminate will come up, doors won't close, you know, a lot of things like that won't happen. You know, unfortunately, the case I had in Mariana, those clients thought they were never going to recover. And so what they did is they went and cut all their doors so they would open and close. Yeah. Right? You know, and it's like people will do what they have to do to survive, but that's not why you pay for an insurance policy.
Right.
You know, and I think a lot of people have a misconception of how insurance worked, and oftentimes insurance come out and a company will come out and they'll act as if they are also a victim of the storm, but they're not. I mean, they are collecting money from you based on a contract of insurance, and what's covered under that contract should be paid based on that contract.
Right.
You know, and it'd be nice if that contract was one page, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's 27 or 35 pages, depending on, you know, what exclusions and things like that. And don't get me wrong. I mean, look, insurance is necessary, and they do pretty well, you know. But they're taking a gamble. They have actuaries, they have people running numbers. They're looking at all these things when these numbers are set, and they're presenting them. And you know, it's not. The analogy is not exact, but it's like going to Vegas, and every time the house loses, they get to tax you more or collect more. Right. You know, and it's just not how it works. You know, if you know, they essentially are the house. You know, and most of the time you're just paying them, but sometimes there's a bad storm, and you don't get to collect for 50 years, and then the one year there's a bad storm, you say you're all going to go bankrupt, and you know, and then you go get the legislator to allow you to increase rates by double, you know, and reduce the rights of the people who are forced to purchase insurance. Right. You know, I mean, most people don't have an option. Right. They have to have insurance because they have a mortgage, and it's required by the bank and loans. Right. You know, so.
What I was going to say a second ago, aside from documenting the actual physical structure of your house, what do you tell people in terms of their personal belongings? Because people have content coverage, right?
Yeah.
How do you prove that if all of your clothes get destroyed or all of your whatever, you know, personal belongings get destroyed, how do you prove that? It's
the same thing. Most of the time it turns into a he said, she said. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, you don't have receipts for the 10,000 pairs of socks and underwear you have. You know, you just have it, mm-hmm. right? And most, you know, all that stuff adds up. What I would encourage everybody to do, just like you're taking photos, a couple things. Let's start back with the, you know, your content question. And there's something I'd like to point out, and that's that, you know, your refrigerator, your washer, your dryer, your range, your stove, your microwave, those are all actually contents, not. It's not just your clothes and your furniture, you know. Essentially, anything that's not permanently connected to the house is content, right? And so, you know, it's very important to take photos of those things, because oftentimes these days there's electronics in them, and if there's a hurricane and you lose power for 3 weeks and your house is inundated with water, most electronics that doesn't work well over time. And they'll fail, you know, and you have fights about whether that's covered or not. But as far as your clothing and your furniture, just it's the same thing. You know, it's very easy. You could walk through a room in your house in less than 5 minutes and take a picture of your couch, your chairs, you know, your tables, your TV, or, you know, it's not that complicated. And the other thing that would be good is simply walk into your closet, take a photo of it.
Or video.
Or video.
Start the video.
You don't need to
start at your front door and walk through your house.
You don't, and part of this is just for your memory,
Right.
because you might not remember. A lot of times, you know, anything that's made out of cloth or wood, when your house is devastated and inundated with water, you just throw it away. You're not thinking, boy, I should take a picture of this, you know, Snoopy T-shirt or this dress, or, you know, it's just not, doesn't happen. You know, but if you have a photo of that closet before, a lot of that will jog your memory, because most of the time you don't even remember what you do have.
Right.
You know, and it's open a drawer, take a photo. You know, it's just common stuff. You know, and it's not, you don't really, you know, when you're getting down to the nitty gritty and that stuff, you're not really trying to nickel and dime it. It's a lot of that stuff is kind of ballpark.
Yeah.
You know, but at least if you have it in front of you, you'll say, well, I know I had 30 pairs of shoes, or, you know, whatever it is that you have. You know, some people have interesting stuff. You know, I had a client who collected cologne, and the insurance company just couldn't believe that there could be 12 bottles of cologne in his closet, you know, and, you know, things like that. And I've had plenty of women with lots of shoes. And
Lots of handbags.
Lots of handbags, and it was a lot of the same problems, you know, because they just don't understand. It kind of gives them a red flag. You know, They think, why would you have 40 purses, or why would you have 12 bottles of cologne, or, you know, and so they start nitpicking.
Yeah, it's a red flag.
It's a red flag. So.
This conversation continues and much more on the next episode of It's No Accident. No matter your injury, Nonni Homola is here to help you recover. Visit noho.law today.